We set up for Avid Calais as a student initiative, a few of us. We just wanted to do something to try and help. So we thought we would set up some aid collection days, gather as much stuff as we could and take it down to the camps in northern France.
And originally we were just going to take one car of donations over to Calais. And then after doing a donation day, we realised the sheer amount of things that people were willing to give. It ended up that we took one van full completely and one car down to Calais.
We drove down to Folkestone and got the Channel Tunnel from Folkestone into Calais, and then we dropped off the aid down in the L'Auberge des Migrants warehouse.
The warehouse is about sorting the donations ready to go to the camp.
Sorting out the clothes they needed, and then they would have to be distributed into different sizes: men, women, waterproof, non-waterproof.
We do a first rough sort and then separate into men's and women's stuff. We don't want any fancy clothes that people cannot use practically. The second sort checks if everything's really practical and not broken and not dirty, and then they are divided up into very specific categories.
And then they get packed up and sent to the camps. And they also make food parcels which can be given out to individuals.
Cold food, so tins of stuff. We bag it and we take it to different areas around the camp, distribute it.
Then they cook actual hot meals which can be taken into the camp if people don't want to cook them on their own.
I wasn't really sure about what to expect. I wasn't expecting shops. I wasn't expecting two mosques and a church. It was very established in Calais. Horrible, horrible conditions, but I sort of admired how they just get on with it. This is their lives, and unfortunately they just accepted it, I suppose.
They'd sort of created a feeling of cohesiveness, a real sense of a community there that was growing and burgeoning and becoming something worthwhile, I think.
There's makeshift shelters, sort of bits of plastic, bits of carpet, bits of wood. They have sort of cafes, but just in their own homes sort of things. Kids and women's area. That's why they've got caravans. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because that's why we're here. And if you go down there and ride round to that other side, is where we've prepared it for with the gendarmerie. We have to rush them here because that bulldozer is it? So the bulldozer's outside now. My responsibility was to translate for the doctors from Granada, from Spanish into English, and then I would then say that to, there was a girl who spoke Arabic and Kurdish, and she would then translate it to the patient. Me and a few of the volunteers were tasked with digging a trench from underneath the medical centre away to this ditch, because where the water's been flowing down, where it rained so much, it was pushing the floor underneath, so we had to dig a trench, drain it all out really.
The huts are very flammable, and unfortunately they go up very easy, and they do go up. There are fires. There's been 3 or 4 fires here this week. People have been hospitalised. Some of the fires, people are lucky, no one is hurt, but they lose their homes, they lose everything inside.
It was the first time that me and you went to Calais, and Bill was showing us around, and near where he dug ditches the day before, there was just a man standing there, just in front of ashes, pile of ashes. He was in bed, and he tried to heat something up, something like along those lines, and the fire just caught to other houses as well and just burnt down about 6 houses. And he was just standing there, just having a cigarette. He had nothing else to do, nothing. He didn't have anywhere else to go. That was his livelihood, and it was gone. And it was just really troubling to see.
I spent most of my time on the trip in Dunkirk, and that was honestly something I've never seen before. Mud up to your knees in places, and everyone in little tents that were not enough, did not provide anywhere near enough protection from the elements.
Dunkirk generally makes the jungle look like a holiday camp. I don't know if any of you have been to a festival before in the UK on a rainy weekend. Imagine that 10 times worse. Imagine that there's no escape. That's where you live. You don't get to go home on the Monday, Tuesday to a nice warm bath, a nice warm bed. You live there.
The mud is so thick and slippery that if you haven't got wellies on, you can barely walk.
It was just no place for anything to stay. I wouldn't, I think you could be prosecuted for keeping a cow in fields like that, but, human beings seem to be okay.
Me and Johnny were tasked with taking a van full of supplies to the camp in Dunkirk. We drove up to the main entrance of the camp, and the CRS, which is the French National Police, they said that we weren't allowed to bring in sleeping bags or duvets, even though it was absolutely freezing cold and the conditions were atrocious. But apparently sleeping bags and duvets weren't allowed in.
I mean, I think the thing is that there were clearly two different philosophies being applied, and the national police and the CRS were far more strict in regards to what we could get on and what we couldn't, and much more sort of intense and fairly, and I'd say aggressive too, in some of their behaviour. Whereas the local police, they were fine. They didn't have any real problems with it because they were sort of under mayoral control, and and as such they didn't really see it as a problem, and allowed us to get straight onto the camp with whatever we were bringing on.
It made me very, very angry to see this, actually. I mean, I've never had an experience like it. Like the French government will sit in the United Nations and berate Assad for refusing to let them deliver humanitarian aid to the worst besieged parts of Syria. And yet here we were in northern France, and exactly the same thing was happening. They were stopping the delivery of vital humanitarian aid into the camp, and I was actually shaking with anger.
But I think one of the best moments was when we were invited into someone's home, a tent, that was inside a cargo container. There was 2 gentlemen who invited us in, and another that was cooking eggs on the stove. And these guys were Kurdish from Iran, but considered themselves Kurdish first and foremost. One was a political activist, he'd been exiled. Another guy had family in the UK, that's why he'd made his way and ended up in Calais. And these guys were so hospitable and generous with their food. They wanted us to eat, and the way they'd made it so homely inside was the first thing that struck me, compared to the sort of battlefield feel of the camp itself. A way of normalising a very turbulent life for them, and allowing them to just have some dignity back by offering us something instead of constantly being the people who need to take things.
Me and Jordan, we brought football and we played football outside or sort of on the road with the kids, and they didn't have any shoes, they just had Wellingtons.
And there are these two kids. One was called Ramir. He was amazing at football. Like, he was just a little... You said he was like 11 from Iraq. In the end, me and Billy just sort of... We just spoke to each other and we were just like, he's too good at football, you know? This boy needs shoes. We drove off to a local shop about 5-10 minutes away, and instantly bought him and his friend a pair of shoes. Best 25 euros I think I ever spent. He was so happy when he got them, and I think that was like rewarding, and that's probably the best experience I've had in Calais.
The experience that I'll take away most from it would be that of the children, really. The children were what got to me. I mean, the men and the women, at least they have an understanding of what's happening around them, whereas the children that are having to grow up in this horrible place, that they don't know anything about it. They've got nothing to do with the political problems that have caused them to be trapped there. And I think it was just very hard to see them going around in that sort of environment. Although it also has to be said, like, the amazing resilience of them as well. Like, they were so happy still, considering the situation that they were in.
There was a little boy, I gave him a bag of children's clothes. He ran away to his tent, to his mum, and kept looking back over his shoulder because he couldn't believe that he was being given clothes and it was a present for him and only for him. And that really struck me. That was a really lovely thing to see, that I'd made a little boy happy that day.
What I read and what the volunteers that I worked with were reporting was that the following day after we left, on the Monday, about 50 to 55 vans, police, CRS vans, pulled up and immediately formed a sort of wall of police around the area that they wanted to dismantle. And they set about dismantling people's homes. Their belongings were lost. And of course this began there's some form of rebuke from this, and these people are very frustrated. Of course, they've been in this awful position for a long time. There's not a great deal of understanding if you think that being for 3 or 4 years, or even like 6-7 months living in a state like that, won't lead you to some sort of frustration. Well, that's totally natural and human, if you ask me. And it's going to continue to happen as long as we keep these people in these sort of environments.
There's a new camp that was being built that we saw whilst we were there. You can see it along the motorway in between Calais and Dunkirk, which is to house those living in Dunkirk already. Being built by MSF, and it's to provide minimum standards of humanitarian well-being to the people that are living in those miserable conditions.
To be honest with you, even though I know it's structurally better, etc., I did think that there were a bunch of small sheds, because there were just like a small slot for a window high up, gave it a look of a prison cell sort of feel. So it wasn't exactly warming or anything, it was just, at least there was a solid structure.
If you're thinking about coming out to Calais and volunteering, you should definitely do it. There's a role for everybody.
It's really important to remember that whatever your background or wherever you're from, you can come, you can help out. There's always a place. We get people from all sorts of professions and age groups coming.
I've met 7-year-olds here and I've met 67-year-olds, 70-year-olds. So if you want to give it a go, definitely do. We'll find a job for you.
It's an amazing experience, and it's an amazing opportunity to see and understand and be involved with a situation that is actually a lot closer to home than many of us think it is.
We're at the moment still fundraising, so we've got a Just Giving page which we're fundraising on to try and send some money out to Aid Box Convoy, which is a voluntary organisation that is working in the new camps. and we're going to see how that goes, and then hopefully a few of us are going to go back this summer and volunteer in the camps again for a longer period of time, so we can do something a bit more worthwhile. I'm hoping to go back in the summer and teach English to some of the children, so that when they do hopefully get into the UK, they're a little bit more ready.